And however, in virtual infrastructure, it is pretty much very important because guys, destroying a physical machine is difficult, but destroying a virtual machine is pretty easy. With 2 clicks, you can destroy a virtual machine. So access and authentication and access control is pretty important. We need to make sure that our virtual infrastructure doesn't land into unsafe hands, and we make sure that only the authorized people will have connectivity to our virtual infrastructure. Now, there are 2 ways how we can access our virtual infrastructure. The first, we can get connected to an ESXi host directly using vSphere client. Second, you can get connected to an ESXi host through vCenter. Now, we know that when we use vSphere client and get connected to an ESXi host, what are the credentials we are using, guys? We use the root credentials, am I right? Suppose I want to get connected to an ESXi host directly. I launch the vSphere client. And then I enter the username and the password of it. Normally, I use the username root and the password. Yes. Now, if I want to access vCenter server, then I'm going to use the username of domain administrator, for example, zoom.com/administrator DC. Now, this is the usernames we are using to connect to an ESXi host or to vCenter server. But the root and administrator DC are the default administrator credentials. Now, in real time, we do not log in using default administrator credentials because of 2 reasons. One, if you log in with the default administrator credential, then it has full privileges because it is the default administrator account. Anyone logs in with this account can do anything. There are no restrictions. Second, if everyone logs in with the same username and password, auditing would be a big problem. For example, you have a team of 25 administrators, and all of you are using the default administrator credentials. That means everyone has the same privileges, full privileges, and maybe in your infrastructure, not everyone requires full privileges. Maybe there are certain group of administrators who are the senior most who require the full privileges, administrative privileges. There might be few administrators who are not that senior. You don't want them to access the infrastructure with full privileges. Okay, so we do not use the default administrator accounts. The second, I told you it is for auditing. Auditing would be a big problem. Like everyone logs in with root, and someone makes a mistake, then how can I find out who has made a mistake? Well, because everyone is logging with root, and the logs will be created with the name of root. Root logged in at so and so time, but we don't know who is the person who has logged in. So we do not use default administrator accounts. We have to use individual accounts. Now, if you are accessing an ESXi host, then you need to have an account available on an ESXi host. That means a user has to be created on an ESXi host, a local ESXi user. Then only you can access the ESXi host directly. Now that means suppose you have 25 administrators. That means on a host you have to create 25 user accounts. In the same way, suppose you have 200 hosts in your infrastructure, then on each host you have to create these 25 user accounts. Now it is not an easy task. It is not at all easy from the perspective of administration. So if that's the case, what is the other option available? The other option available is that rather than creating individual user accounts on each and every ESXi host, assigning permissions, I can do one thing. I can just integrate ESXi host with Active Directory, and most probably everyone has an account in Active Directory, so the users from Active Directory can access ESXi hosts, provided we give permissions to the respective users. So the ease of administration, we can integrate ESXi with Active Directory, and the users from Active Directory can be given permissions, appropriate permissions. So this is one way. The other way we access vCenter server is through other way we access our vSphere infrastructure is through vCenter server. While we are accessing vCenter server, we are using the default domain administrator credentials. We should not use it. So what should be done? We need to give permissions of normal user accounts which are available in Active Directory or any other directory services like LDAP and IS with the local operating system users or SSO users and groups. If we give permissions to those respective users, then everyone can log in with their respective usernames and password. Based on the privileges or the permissions assigned, they will be given access. So in this way, we can restrict people from unauthorized access, as well as we'll make sure that auditing is easy because everyone logs in with their individual usernames and passwords. And if someone makes a mistake in the logs, we can find out that who has done that particular mistake. So in a moment, we are going to see how to create a local user account on an ESXi host and how to assign a permission to that user. We'll also see how to integrate an ESXi host with Active Directory so that users from Active Directory can be given permissions on the ESXi host. In the same time, we'll also see how to add users from different identity sources onto vCenter server and assign permissions. Not only that, we have certain security profile services available on the ESXi host. We'll also see how to manage ESXi firewall and how to enable and disable lockdown mode. Guys, I hope you remember lockdown mode. If you enable lockdown mode, then no one can access an ESXi host directly using vSphere client. They can access only through vCenter server. So if you haven't enabled lockdown mode, how to enable it later and how to disable it, we're going to see that as well. And before I show you the practical part, let us understand the terminology and the meanings of privileges, role, object, user, and permission. Now, what is a privilege? Guys, privilege is nothing but an action that can be performed. That is what is called as privilege. And role is nothing but set of privileges. Suppose if I say I've assigned an administrator role, then administrator will have all the privileges. Okay? So privilege, action that can be performed, role, set of privileges, and object in vCenter inventory. We take you to the vCenter. Now this is my inventory, and here these are all my objects. Okay, what is an object? Object target of the action. Okay, and then user or group who can perform that particular action. Then ultimately, what is the permission? Permission. We assign permission on an object. Then we decide who is the user and what is the role which we have assigned. All put together forms your permission. Okay. So these are the terminologies and meanings of it you need to understand. Permission on an object, who is the user and what is the role. Then all put together forms your permission. Okay. So let us see how to create an individual user account on an ESXi host. Guys, I can create that account only logging to an ESXi host directly. I cannot create a local account. I cannot create a user on an ESXi host through vCenter. Guys, I am on 1.30 through vCenter. If you see this right hand side, you find tabs associated with it. You don't find a tab here which you can find when you get connected to an ESXi host directly. Are you observing this? What is that one particular tab which is not available in vCenter server? You see, there is no local users and groups tab when you are connected through vCenter server. Are you able to observe, guys? You see this, I am through vCenter, I am connected to this ESXi host through vCenter, and there is no local users and groups tab available. But I am connected to an ESXi host directly using vSphere client. We find this local users and groups. So you can create a local user on an ESXi host only by connecting it directly using vSphere client. So let me show you how to create a user. You need to go and get connected to an ESXi host, go to the tab local users and groups, then in the empty area, click right click and click on add. Now here you need to create a user. Let us say G. Okay, you need to assign a password. And here
So
you find the
Mujib,
option. Yes.
a question.
Yes.
When we install the ESXi, it
Uh-huh.
asks you to enable the lockdown mode. Is it
Yes.
advisable to enable that or disable it?
Yes. In real time we enable it, guys. Yes.
In a real-time environment, you do, is it?
Yes, we do enable it. Why? Because
Okay.
if you don't enable it, then if you get connected to an ESXi host and make any configuration changes, those configuration changes will not get updated to vCenter server and there might be conflicts. So it is recommended to enable lockdown mode. And suppose vCenter server is down, or sometimes like this particular scenario where you need to create a local user account, then enable lockdown mode temporarily and afterwards disable it. Okay. Fine. Now here you find this option which says grant shell access to this user. If you check this box, then a user can access the shell. That means the console. If you don't check it, then user will not be able to access the console. So I check this box, click OK. Now I have created a local user account on an ESXi host. Just by creating an account, the user will not be given permission to access this host. In order to give the permission, you need to go to the permissions tab. Here you find the permissions tab. Go to the permissions tab. Now right click in the empty area. Click on add permission. What is permission I told you? On the object, we select the user, then assign the role. Here on the object 1.30, which is my ESXi host. I need to add the user. Click on add. Here you find the local users available on this ESXi host. Just now I have created this user called Mujib. I select this user, click on add, click on OK. Now I've added the user. Now I need to assign a role to this user. There are predefined roles, three predefined roles. This junior admin and senior admin, I have created it. I'll show you how to create these customized roles in a moment. But by default, there are only three roles available: no access, read only, and administrator. If you give read-only access to this user, then Mujib can log into this ESXi host. He can only observe things, but he cannot do anything on it. If you assign administrator role, then he'll be given full privileges. No access, then he'll not be able to access it. So let me say that I'm giving administrator role to this user called Mujib. Click on OK. Now, this is how we assign permission to the local user. Now, we have seen there are three predefined roles. You can also customize a role according to your requirement. In order to create a customized role, you need to click on Home on vCenter, vSphere Client, sorry. Then under Administration, you find Roles. Click on Roles. These two roles I have created it. Okay. Let me remove these roles. So I'll show you how to create those roles manually. Now these are the three predefined roles available on any ESXi host. If you want to create a customized role, you need to click on Add Role on the top, and then you need to give a name to that particular role. Let us say I want this administrator or this role to be as junior admin. Okay. Now, being a junior admin, these are the privileges which can be assigned to this particular role. I want him to give few tasks, like you can create a task, okay, you can schedule tasks, don't remove a task, but modify the task, run the task, okay, and on the virtual machines, let us say he can take snapshots. Do not remove a snapshot, but he can take a snapshot. Fine, and that's it. I don't want to give much privileges to him. He can do only the task maintenance as well as the snapshot maintenance. That's it. So only these two privileges has been assigned to this role called junior admin. Suppose there is a new guy who is new to your infrastructure, you can assign this role to him and he can access this ESXi host, but the role would be very limited role. Okay, this is how we can create customized roles, and on the users you can assign these roles. For example, this is the user, we want to reassign a role to him. Right click properties and then assign him junior admin. Click on OK. Then Mujib, the user will get the role junior admin which you have customized. So this is how we create local users on an ESXi host. This is how we assign permissions to that user, and this is how we create customized roles by going into the roles and creating a new role. Now this is creating a user on an ESXi host. Suppose you have 25 administrators in your department, then you need to create these 25 user accounts on this host. In the same way, you have to create on each and every host in your infrastructure. It is very difficult for you as an administrator doing all these tasks, and it is not good as well. What is the better way? What is the best way is to integrate ESXi with Active Directory. So once I integrate ESXi with Active Directory, then in Active Directory most probably we'll have our user accounts. So I can just assign permissions. Once I integrate ESXi host with Active Directory, the users from Active Directory can access ESXi host, and what are the permissions that I assign to that particular user. Now let us see how to integrate ESXi with Active Directory. Now this configuration can be done directly connected to an ESXi host or through vCenter server as well. So this is my vCenter server. You need to select the host, go to the configuration tab, and go to the authentication services. If you go to the authentication services under the software section, you find the authentication type right now, local authentication. Now we can integrate this with Active Directory. In order to do that, we need to click on properties. Once you click on properties, the directory services configuration dialog box appears. You need to drop down and select Active Directory. Now you need to mention the domain name here. We will say zoom.com, and then click on join domain. It is similar to adding a Windows machine to the domain. Click on join. It will ask for the username and the password of the Active Directory domain. Provide the username and the password. Click on join domain. Now in a moment we have seen that domain is zoom.com. Click on OK, and this directory type has changed to Active Directory. Why? Because now ESXi has been integrated with Active Directory. Once ESXi is integrated with Active Directory, you can go on ESXi host. Now you can add users from Active Directory and assign permissions. I am connected to an ESXi host directly using vSphere client. I'm going to the permissions tab, then right click the empty area, add permissions. Now I need to add a user. Click on add. Here you find server. Server means the local ESXi host. These are the local user accounts. If I drop down, now you find Zoom. Why? Because this host has been integrated with the domain Zoom. Once I click on Zoom, you will be able to see all the users from Zoom. Okay. Now here I have a user in the domain zoom.com, Mujib. Add that user. Click on OK. And now on the right side, I can assign a role to him. Let me say that he is an administrator. Click on OK. Now, the user Mujib has been added. If you might have observed that previously there were only 4 users: root, DCUI, VPX user, and Mujib. Now I have added Mujib from Zoom domain. But you are seeing something else here. I did not add it, but this got added automatically. Have you observed this, guys? Have you observed this? This got added automatically. There is a group from Zoom. It got added automatically. Now, how it got added automatically? Now, keenly observe this, guys. It is a typical behavior of ESXi with Active Directory. This is the typical behavior of ESXi with Active Directory. When you integrate ESXi host with Active Directory, and if you create a group called ESX admins in Active Directory, guys, there might be multiple groups and multiple users in Active Directory. But if you create a group with this specific name should be ESX admins. If you create a group with this particular name in Active Directory, ESX admins, and then integrate that ESXi host with Active Directory, then automatically this particular group will get added to the ESXi host and will be assigned administrator privileges by default. You need not add this group. This group gets added automatically, and this group will be assigned administrator privileges. This is the typical behavior of ESXi with Active Directory. You understand the concept, guys? If you did not create this particular group on the Active Directory, specifically this name, ESX admins, then it will not get added. Unless and until you create this group, the group name should be specific. It is ESX space admins. Only this name. The group should be created only with this particular name. Then only it gets added to the ESXi host automatically, and this group is assigned administrator role automatically. So this is the default, typical behavior of ESXi with Active Directory. Now, because of this advantage, in ESX on Active Directory, you can create a group called ESX admins and add whoever requires administration privileges, those users in this group. Now, there is no need for me to add individual users and assign individual administration roles on ESXi host. Why? Because this group gets added automatically, and that group will be assigned administrator role. Did you get the concept, guys? Any questions on this?
Can you create with minimum roles? That one admin.
ESX admins?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to create this on Active Directory, guys.
Minimum roles. Actually, administrator means they are going to get all the.
Only this group will get administration roles. Okay. If you want to add any other group, then you need to add that group and assign a different role to it. But this group will get by default administrator role, and this group gets added automatically by default. You need not add this group. Clear? Only this group gets created, gets added automatically. Let me show you. I have created a group with the name ESX admins.
I was trying to connect to 1.222 Mujib, and it says insert the card. No, why it says that.
Now, you tried now?
Yeah, just now.
Yesterday I did lab. I was able to connect.
It's available, guys. It's running.
No, I'm able to connect to it, but when I go into the administrator account, put in my password, that's where it says connect. Insert the
The
card.
username is administrator and the password is ZOOM_123.
No, you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm able to get to it, and it gives me the administrator and exchange to log in. And then exchange/administrator and gives me other users. When I click on administrator, it comes up saying connect a smart card.
I'm able to connect it. CS 10.0.1.222.
That's what I'm trying to connect to as well, but for me, why is it coming different?
Are you connected to the remote machine? We use zooma.pydns.tv :3390. From there, you need to connect.
Yes, that's where I'm trying to connect from. And when I click on exchange/administrator account, and it says connect a.
No, don't use exchange/administrator. Just use the normal administrator account.
Okay.
Just normal administrator. Okay.
Okay.
So this is how we integrate our ESXi host with Active Directory, and we can assign roles. Okay. And this is the account, or this is the group. Let me show you that group here. I go to Active Directory users and computers. You see here, there are groups. I created a group with the name ESX admins. Okay. The name should be specifically this, guys. Okay. ESX admins. So if you create this group, then this group gets added automatically to the ESXi host, and this group is assigned the administrator role. Fine. So this is how we create users and how to integrate ESXi host with Active Directory. and how to assign permissions. Now let us see on vCenter server, okay, how to add users on vCenter server and assign permissions. This is my vCenter server. Get connected to an vCenter server using vSphere client. Excuse me, guys. Now, here this is my inventory, guys. These are my objects. On every object of vCenter server inventory, you find this tab called permissions. This is my topmost, let us say, root of my vCenter hierarchy, which is the vCenter server system itself. You find the tab permissions. You find beneath these objects like data centers, on every object you find the tab called permission. On the cluster, you find the tab called permission. On the host, you find the tab called permission. That means on every object, on a virtual machine, you find the tab called permission. Now, every object you find these tab permissions. However, if you assign a permission on the topmost root of the hierarchy, that means on the vCenter server system, that permission will get propagated to all the sub-objects beneath it. That means the entire vCenter inventory, that particular permission will get affected. Okay. Now let me show you how to add a user and assign him permission on vCenter server. I'm on the topmost directory of the hierarchy, which is vCenter server system itself. And in the permissions tab, right click in the empty area, click on add permission. Now I have to click on add the user. Add a user. Now here, if you see this, you need to understand this. You find this server. What is this server here? Server means this is the local machine or the machine which is running the vCenter server application or vCenter server service, and these are the accounts or local user accounts available on that particular machine. Okay. Suppose you created a local user on that machine, then the user can be added and he can be assigned a role on vCenter server. Then I find some other options as well here. If I drop down, you find Zoom. This is the domain. If I select Zoom, then the users from the domain zoom.com, I can add users from the zoom.com domain and I can assign permissions to them. Okay. It is retrieving the users and groups information from the zoom.com domain. See, these are the users from the domain zoom.com. All right. So drop down. Here you find system-domain. What is the system-domain? System-domain is nothing but SSO server. If I select system-domain, and I can add SSO users and groups. If you have created SSO users and groups, SSO users can be added on vCenter server and permissions can be assigned to them. Okay. So let me take a user from zoom.com. Let me say G, click on add. Okay. The user from the domain Zoom has been added and I have to assign a role. And on vCenter server, you find many predefined roles, like read-only administrator, virtual machine power user, so on and so forth. Whatever the user role you want to assign to this user, you can assign a role. I'm assigning administrative privileges, click on OK. Now, I've added the user Mujib from the domain Zoom, and I've assigned him the administration role. Now, where did I add this user? On the topmost directory of the hierarchy, which is vCenter server. Now, this user gets propagated to all the sub-objects. If I go on this particular data center, go to the permissions tab, you find Mujib, because he has been assigned permission on the topmost hierarchy. Go to this host, you find Mujib. Go to the virtual machine, you find Mujib. Okay. So if you assign permission to the topmost hierarchy, it will get propagated down to the sub-objects. However, you can also specifically on an object, you can again go to the permissions tab and assign a permission. Fine. So this can be done. Okay, this is how we add users and assign roles and assign permissions. There are default roles, predefined default roles. If you want to customize a role on vCenter, again you need to click on Home on vSphere client. Now under administration, you'll find roles. Here these are the predefined roles. If you want to create a customized role, then click on Add Role. Again, you can give a name here. Let's say Senior Admin. Okay, and what are the roles or privileges you want to assign? You can just assign those roles. Okay, not remove a data center. So in this way, data store. In this way, whatever the privileges you want to assign, you can assign the privileges. In this way, you can give the privileges to the senior administrator. Fine. So in this way, according to your requirement in your infrastructure, you can create customized roles and assign these roles to the individual users. So this is how we create a customized role on vCenter server. Now try to understand this. If you are accessing vCenter server, then the users should be assigned permissions on vCenter. Okay. If you are accessing ESXi host, then users should be assigned permissions on the ESXi host. Yeah. Now, let us see how to manage the firewall of ESXi host. You can do this task directly connected to an ESXi host or to vCenter server as well. Let me get connected to an ESXi host. Now, go to the configuration tab. Under the software section, you find security profile. Click on security profile. And here you find certain services which are running on your ESXi host, which are called as security profile services. Okay, and you can stop or start certain services. If you click on the properties of it, you find certain services like HA agent. You can restart this HA agent if you want by clicking on options. Click on restart if you're coming across any issues. You can also restart your vCenter agent, which is VPXA. Okay. In this way, you can manage the services starting and stopping. If certain services are not running, you can start those services in this way. Now here comes the firewall. Guys, we know that from 5 onwards, vSphere 5 onwards, VMware has integrated a basic firewall or a stateless firewall. Now, this basic firewall blocks all the incoming and outgoing connections except those which are used by your ESXi host. So you can manage this firewall by clicking on the properties of it. And these are the default incoming and outgoing ports which can be enabled and disabled. Guys, from interview point of view, certain ports are important. Interviewers may ask you what is the port used by vMotion, vCenter agent, okay, or so to say HA agent. That way, you can make a note of these by going to the firewall. For example, vMotion uses 8000 port, okay, and you can see vSphere client uses 902 and 443 port. HA agent uses 8182 ports. Okay, if you want to enable or disable any port, incoming or outgoing, you can do it by checking the box will enable it, unchecking the box will disable that incoming or outgoing port. Okay, now let me show you how we can restrict the access to an ESXi host using vSphere client as well. Click on vSphere client using the firewall. We can restrict access to this ESXi host. And if I go to the firewall option, here by default, this vSphere client will access connections from any IP. Suppose you want to restrict the vSphere client access, then you can mention allow only connections from the following networks. If I mention that only 10.0.1. series is allowed, okay, then you can mention the range of networks. Then vSphere client will accept the connections only from 10.0.1. series. Okay, so in this way we can restrict access to vSphere client by configuring the networks on our firewall. So this is about how to manage a firewall. Then, for example, while adding an ESXi host to vCenter server, it will ask you whether you want to enable the lockdown mode. For example, you haven't enabled at that particular time. You can enable it from here. In the same section, you find lockdown mode. Click on edit. And once you check this option, then lockdown mode will be enabled. Once you enable the lockdown mode, no one can log in directly to an ESXi host. If there is any requirement, you can also disable this from here again. This is how we enable and disable lockdown mode. Right, guys. Now this was about your access control. Okay. access and authentication. Now, sometimes you configure the roles and give permissions to multiple users, and sometimes there might be conflicts, and users may complain that though I have privileges to access a particular component, but I'm unable to access it. So most probably it might be the problem with certain with a permission conflicts. So we'll try to understand the scenarios here, like how permissions get affected on vCenter server, and how users will get affected based on these permissions. Okay, I've prepared certain scenarios. Let us try to understand those scenarios. Or let me use, guys, the first scenario here. Guys, this is similar if someone knows how share and NTFS permissions work on Windows Active Directory. It is absolutely similar to it. However, let me explain this scenario wise. In the first scenario, guys, if you assign a permission on an object, then that permission will propagate down the object hierarchy to all sub-objects, which I have explained right now. If I've given the permission on the topmost object, which is my topmost directory, which is vCenter server system itself, I've given the permission to Mujib, then this will get propagated to all sub-objects. So that is the first scenario. And here, you can also explicitly override a permission at lower level objects. What is the meaning of it? Is that on the topmost hierarchy, I have assigned Mujib the administration role, but let me say that on DC Zoom, which is a down level object, which is a virtual machine, I can override a permission. Let me say Mujib is given administrative privileges from the topmost hierarchy, but here I will override it and I will give a permission no access. I can do that. Then what is going to happen? That at a lower level object, I have overridden the topmost hierarchy permission. So this is the first scenario. I can do that. Permissions can propagate down the object to the all sub-objects, but you can also explicitly override a permission at a lower level object. We have seen this right now. Now, in the second scenario, a user can be a member of multiple groups. Like for example, in Active Directory, you have multiple groups, and a user can be a member of multiple groups. Okay, and those groups have been assigned permissions on the same object. Let us say there is group A and group B, and Mujib is a user of group A as well as group B. Let us say on this host permissions, I have added group A and I have given certain permissions X, Y, Z, and I have added group B on the same host and I have given permissions A, B, C. Now Mujib is a user of group A as well as group B. So what would be the effective permissions of Mujib on this object? Now Mujib, as being a member of group A as well as group B, will get both the permissions X, Y, Z and A, B, C. Clear, guys? This is the second scenario. When a user is a member of multiple groups with permissions on the same object, the user gets both the permissions. Let me take the example of this. Yeah.
What if the permissions are contradicted?
I'm coming. I'm coming. This is my vCenter. I'll explain it. This is my vCenter. Okay. And there might be objects like Hyderabad data center. Okay. We will have a Bangalore data center. Fine. Then you have, let us say on Bangalore data center, I have group A, and the permissions are X, Y, Z, and I have also given group B permissions, and the permissions are A, B, C. Now Mujib is a member of both the groups, and I have assigned this permission on Bangalore object. Then Mujib will get X, Y, Z permissions as well as A, B, C permissions. Okay. Now, someone has raised the question if there is a conflict. Guys, if there is a conflict, always keep in mind the most restricted will take effect than liberal. always security, when it comes to security part, if there is a conflict, then restriction, the most restricted privilege will take precedence over the liberal privilege. Okay, keep that in mind. If there is conflict, then the most restricted will take effect. Okay, this is the second scenario. Now the third scenario, when a user is a member of multiple groups with permissions on different objects, then both roles propagate to their child objects. It is pretty simple. It is similar to the first part of scenario 1. Like this, user is a member of multiple groups and permissions on multiple objects, then those permissions will propagate to their child objects. For example, Hyderabad data center have assigned a permission to a group. On Bangalore data center have assigned a permission to that group. Those permissions will get propagated to their respective child objects. For example, here I have a child object, okay, called data host 10.0.1.30. Then whatever the permission I assign on Hyderabad will get propagated to the object 1.30. In the same way, whatever the permission I give it on Bangalore, let us say there is a child object 10.0.1.40. So it gets propagated to 1.40 as well. It is very simple. The third scenario. Now, fourth scenario. It is quite similar to the second part of the first scenario. What is the scenario here? Permissions defined explicitly for the user on an object take precedence over all group permissions on that same object. Now, let me explain. Now, let me say that Mujib is a user of group A, and group A has been assigned certain permissions on the object Bangalore. And now, explicitly, I'm adding the individual user, Mujib, okay, onto the same object, and I'm giving the permission as denied or no access. Group permission Mujib is having the permissions XYZ, but the individual user on the same object has been denied the permission. So individual user permissions will take precedence over the group permissions. That is the meaning of the scenario 4. Permissions defined explicitly for the user will take precedence over group permissions. So whenever you add a group and assign a permission to it, and when a particular user, a part of that particular group, when you add that user explicitly on that particular object and assign it a permission, that permission will take precedence over the group permission. So these are the 4 scenarios. If you understand these scenarios well, and if you come across any conflicts in your infrastructure, then you can easily troubleshoot it. Always keep in mind, guys, whenever there is restricted privilege, will take precedence over the liberal privilege. Okay, when there is no conflict, maybe you will get cumulative privileges. That means you can get XYZ as well as ABC. However, when there is conflict, then most restricted will take precedence over the liberal one. In the same way, the user privileges will take precedence over group privileges. And permissions assigned in the topmost hierarchy of the object will get propagated to the child objects. However, you can explicitly override a permission at a lower level object to the same user or group. Fine. So these are the scenarios of permissions, and this is how you need to understand and troubleshoot if there is any problem in access control. So this is all about your access control, guys. We have seen how to create an individual account on an ESXi host.
Hello? Hello? I think it got disconnected. Power failure maybe.
Yeah, hi Rupesh. Yeah, this is Prabhakar. Yeah. He got disconnected. You know why you got disconnected?